Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome, living beneficiaries, to the Estate Radio Show. I am your host, Eugene Richard of the House of Hidalgo. Today is Wednesday, May the 22nd, 2013. This is the only show dedicated to you, the living beneficiary, and to helping you learn how to live free as your Creator intended. Today I have a very special guest, Dr. Patrick Hatwan, a lover of all things natural and probably one of the greatest assets to the House of Hidalgo. I want to welcome Dr. Hatwan to the estate.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Eugene.
Well, thank you, Dr. Hatwan, for being available to come online. This is a very important subject, as we've discussed before. You have a lot to offer in the world that we live in today, as we fight our food being depleted of nutrition and so on and so forth. Dr. Hatwan, if we plan to apply our roles of living beneficiaries, then we have to first be alive, both in law and in body. So can you assist my listeners in developing a life-sustaining or life-enhancing regimen?
It'd be very simple, and I'd be very willing to do so. And I think that the nicest thing that we can do is to start off with the basics. And when we do that, the basics get real simple. It's good air, good water, good food, healthy elimination, a proper spiritual connection, and then a good, healthy outlet connecting to other people. And when I list those, then it begins to be a little bit complicated because we know there's no good air anymore. Okay, but
right.
Good air is there's things that we can do about that, and primarily we must understand that breathing is part of detoxification and cleaning the body. And so if we can't get good air, we need to understand that what we take in has to come out, or we have to be able to get it out. That then follows with good water. And we know that, just hang on a minute.
Sure, no problem.
Good water is a difficult thing to get today because most people are stuck with the city water. Now, if we've got a good well or if we've got good spring water, those are the next best options, and they're preferable to any other option. Then, if we can't get that, then we've got to start looking at, and let me back up just a little bit, get away from fluoridated water. Okay, I just had a fun little conversation with some people in a town about 35 minutes from Lincoln, Nebraska. We were talking about fluoride, and I asked them if they thought fluoride was good. And they said, well, yeah, it protects your teeth. And my simple response was, where did you get that science? And I didn't challenge them on it. I just asked them questions. And I said, did you get your science from somebody that just told you to believe it, or did you go research? And many people will have a little difficulty. I think what we could do is demonstrate the paradigm that we're stuck in with water is, Eugene, if I would come to you and ask you two questions and allow you to set the tone, would you like to have a discussion about clean water, or would you like to have a discussion about the dangers of fluoridated water? which one of those two discussions would you be willing to participate in? And generally it would be the first, because we've set a construct for ourselves that fluoride prevents cavities and saves our teeth. And so we carried on with that conversation just a little bit. So we've got the good air and the good water and then the good food, and we know that that's a little bit difficult today. One of the things that I like to do with people is perform a grocery cart autopsy, so that when people come out of the grocery store, we like to look at their groceries and then take a look at the ingredients in their so-called food. And when I'm doing that, I tell them, a lot of this is, most people would, if they're wise, probably call it junk food, but there's really no such thing as junk food. It can either be junk or it has to be food. It can't be both. Okay?
That's a good point.
So we have some fun with people, but food should be fresh, and fresh in the grocery store is really a misnomer. Fresh would be freshly harvested and eaten within the same day. We understand that the garden would be a good source of fresh foods, because most of the stuff that comes into the grocery store is shipped 2,000 or 3,000 miles. It sits for a couple days, and it's put out on the shelf, and it sits there for a few days. It may or may not get purchased, but it's probably 2 to 3 weeks old by the time we bring it home. Interesting experience I had at one of the larger whole food grocery stores. We were looking at some pears one day, and I grabbed them, and they're pretty hard, and the produce manager came over and said, is there something I can do for you? And I said, well, these are really pretty hard and pretty green. And he says, well, you take them home and put them on the counter and wait for a few days, and they'll ripen. And I said, and quite jokingly, I said, are you sure they ripen, or are they rotting? And it took him back a little bit. And see, we need to think about these things in fun ways, Eugene, because ripening is on the vine and rotting is after you pick it. Nature is starting to decompose that piece of produce as soon as it's harvested. Okay? So if we're eating decomposition food, we're not getting the pure benefit from it. All right, so then we go on to healthy elimination. And I'll bring in a little bit of discussion that I had with Dr. Molden back in June of 2009. He said, Pat, we need to have we need to open the excretory system for people so they can detoxify and eliminate what isn't digestible. See, what the body can't digest or eliminate, it'll store off as a toxin in fatty tissue. And if we're not eliminating in a healthy fashion, we're going to become toxic. And so what we need to understand is that our bowel movements and our urination have to be very, very predictable and in sync. If we put a meal in, and most people don't, but one meal in means one meal out. And the equivalent, by way of analogy discussion that I could bring, is if we put 5 gallons of gas in a car and we burn it up and don't let the exhaust go out, what happens to the car? So the same thing would be true if we're unable to eliminate the byproducts of metabolism, either in feces or urine. Okay, and then I always go to a healthy spiritual contact and connection. And what I mean by that is that we give honor and thanks not only to each other, but for the food that we eat, and that the food is nourishing and healthy to the body. And when we do that, the people that we eat with are benefiting from our gift of grace, our gift of love, and our gift of acceptance and forgiveness with each other. And the meal then becomes a very powerful, especially when it's prepared by hand. What I like to do is I love to cook. And I cook and I put love into the food with my hands when I'm preparing it. And I don't like to cook under stress and pressure and duress and angst and anger and turmoil. I like to have a peaceful, relaxing, giving moment in preparing the food that we're about to eat. And that is transferred into us then when we consume that food. And we give thanks to God and to our higher power for that.
Right.
And then, of course, it follows then that if we have good, healthy relationships with people around us, that transfers into good health as well. But I like to do that. I like to eat with people that are friendly and they're open and they're receptive instead of miserable and condescending. And it's difficult to have a fun meal and an enjoyable, healthy meal with people that are really in negative positions. So that would be, Eugene, the simplified approach. Good air, good water, good food, proper elimination, healthy spiritual contact, and then we have that release or that outlet. We've got to work. We have to have physical exercise. That all equates into proper metabolic processes.
Now, Dr. Hatwan, you mentioned as the first step getting good quality air. Now, how you mentioned that there was a way to do that. Could you share a little bit on that?
Well, we can't clean the air up, so to speak, without some type of equipment in house. We could do ionizers, but for the most part, we're exposed to the environment. And we can't clean that air up as we go out and do our work a day and our daily experience. So the things that we have to do are to consume products that allow the body to detoxify and eliminate. For example, I know that you live in a pretty agricultural area, and when the farmers are out turning the ground, and after they finish turning the ground, even before that, sometimes they spray, they put fertilizers down, all that stuff is in the air, and we're breathing it.
Right.
And we have to get it out of the body. So if we're not consuming either A, foods that support that elimination or some form of supplementation to eliminate or to at least grab on to those toxins and remove them from the body, that'll do damage to us. So when we talk about doing good things about or trying to do things that eliminate the properties of air that are unhealthy, it always comes from food and water and supplements, of course.
Right. And on the subject of supplements, that was actually the next question I was going to ask you is, we got an exploding supplement market in the United States today, and people actually think that the supplement they're getting off the shelf at Walmart is helping them. Can you guide us into what supplements are better than others or kind of separate that for us?
It's pretty simple. 99% of the stuff is really not very worthwhile. And I'm very quick to say that, and I do it based on experience more than anything else, Eugene. When I look at supplements, I'll always look at the ingredients. I'll look at, for example, whether there's a D form or an L form of the particular supplement. D or L implies the spin, and the D form is a synthetic form. So we want the L forms. L-arginine, for example, if we're doing an amino acid, that's the proper spin. And then I'll look at, for example, if there's carrageenan or titanium dioxide or sucralose or Splenda or acesulfame, or if there's food colors. We see a lot of times in children's multivitamins, we see red, yellow, and blue. Food colors are very toxic and very, I want to say, deadly. We don't die from them overnight, but they set up long-term. They set up disease conditions. So I'll look at the ingredients on almost all the supplements that are out there in the grocery stores and even the health food stores. Most of them are not very good. And I even have people call in from time to time. They've got this Congus or the Bongus supplement, supposed to clean it up, and they ask me to look at the ingredients, and generally they're really not very good. So I'm cautious about supplements. I like minerals. I like clean water. I like herbals, and I like whole food sourced, stabilized, and standardized multivitamins. When I look at individual ingredients, I'm very careful to make sure that they're whole food sourced.
Right. Now, we've established a relationship in the past, so obviously you've taught me a lot of things, and so that's where I generate some of these questions from. But for those who are listening or just learning about this, you've taught my wife and I, and I'm blessed to have a wonderful wife who really takes care of me and makes me do what I'm supposed to do, because otherwise I probably wouldn't. And she's learned most of it from you. We've entered into this grain-free life. It's really changed a lot of things in the way that we eat. It's changed our, you talked earlier about elimination. It's made the elimination process much easier, and more consistent, so on and so forth. Can you, I know it's a short show, but can you kind of go into that in whatever states you can?
Sure, and I want to just say a big thank you to your wife, Ruth. She's an awesome, awesome lady. She asks a lot of questions, and we have a lot of fun bantering back and forth and exchanging information. So I have never met her, but she seems to be such a gracious woman, and I know you're blessed to have her in your life. And one of the things that we've talked about is grain-free. And most people, I think they come a little bit disturbed away from that discussion. They come disturbed from it because we're taught that we should consume grains. And I think it comes from the food pyramid more than anything else. We were talking about soybeans and wheat and corn, and those are the primary subsidized grains. Right. And today, most of those grains, Eugene, don't resemble the grains that existed 2,000 to 3,000 years ago. And our body's blueprint, our DNA, our blueprint for life does not recognize the grains that are fed to humans and livestock. And at a baseline for people to get a picture of what we're talking about is I come off with a real half-cocked, crazy, ridiculous statement, and it just simply that gizzards grind grains. Cows don't got gizzards, and neither do people. All right?
Makes sense.
And so when we feed grain to livestock, it fattens them up. And if it'll fatten livestock up, what'll it do to us? And it's simply because of what we said earlier, what the body cannot digest or eliminate, it will store off as a toxin in fatty tissue. And so if we can't eliminate that, and our blueprint, our DNA, does not know what to do with those novel proteins, because most of those grains that we consume today are either hybridized or genetically modified. If our body does not know how to respond to those, the automatic response is store it off because it can't eliminate it. The machinery does not exist to take out proteins that never existed by God's creation. The proteins that are in those grains are man's creation. And we didn't get created, man didn't create man. God created man, and God created the grains that don't exist anymore. So we have to be very careful when we set up our construct. It's just like the fluoride in the water. The grains are supposed to be healthy, but they're not. And so we have to be, and it's difficult. Lynn and I are even on the trek to get 100% grain-free, but it's almost impossible. If you go out to eat, you're going to get some grain somewhere. So we've substantially reduced, and I'm happy to hear that you guys are on the path too, Eugene.
We are, and we're much better for it. Not to say that there's not strange things happening in our bodies because of it, but we are on that path, and I know that we're better for it. Another element that you taught us, and it kind of goes back to the foods that we eat. The fresher, the better, so on and so forth. But we know that a lot of the fruits and vegetables and whatnot, when we get them, they've been sitting in storage for a long time, and they've had pesticides applied to them and all that. You taught us about diatomaceous earth, and it's been a revolutionary idea for us. I wonder if you could speak on that.
Well, that's a wonderful product, and when I talk supplements, that is one thing that I do include in the supplement list. And what diatomaceous earth is thousands of years ago, diatoms that were in the water basically are in deposits, and one of those deposits happens to be up in Norfolk, Nebraska. And essentially what they are is, I like to call them little magnets for toxins. Mm-hmm. And their charge is such that the toxins are positively charged, and the diatomaceous earth is a negative charge, and it's a honeycomb structure, and it pulls those toxins in. It'll pull heavy metals, toxins of various forms. It's even anti-parasitic, works to clean out the intestines and the colon. Basically, life-supporting. We're aware of a product called zeolite, and that's essentially what diatomaceous earth is. They function the same way, but at a lot more affordable price. We could go purchase a zeolite product, for example, and spend $30, and for $30 you can buy a 50-pound bag of diatomaceous earth. And that 50-pound bag will last most people for 40 or 50 years if they don't overdo it. But it's a wonderful product. It replaces silica in the body, and the silica is a very, very essential item. And metabolically, it's very crucial to our lives. But I like it for the detoxification. It helps clean out radioactive materials, cleans up, again, as I mentioned, heavy metals. It'll pull mercury, it'll pull aluminum, cadmium, beryllium, nickel, any of the heavy metals that, in fact, it'll even pull lead. And so, to me, it's a very affordable, very practical way. You put a teaspoon in a glass of water and drink one a day. Some people might do two. That's pretty strong, but it's a very practical way to detoxify and clean the body up.
Mm-hmm. It is. We do a teaspoon a day, and because of some gout issues that I've been having, I've been using cherry concentrate with the diatomaceous earth in it and choking that down every morning. It's kind of rough. Kind of rough. But
do you have a little problem? Do you have a little problem with diatomaceous earth?
No, I don't have any problem with diatomaceous earth. I mean, palating it is sometimes difficult. You have to get used to it.
Yeah, it's got a little chalky taste to it.
Right, but but it's an awesome product. Now, let me ask you this: I actually ran into an interesting objection when it comes to diatomaceous earth, or as they call it, DE. This gentleman noticed that after we soaked our fruits and our vegetables in diatomaceous earth for 30 minutes, that the vegetables had a kind of a coating, a chalky coating on them, and he wouldn't go anywhere near it because he thought that somehow that chalky coating was going to start building up inside of our bodies and create some disastrous situation. How do you respond to that?
Well, it's kind of like the same way I responded to the guys about fluoride today. I said, where did they get their science?
Right.
Essentially, there is no science. The guys it's a typical response. Let me paint the picture this way. When cameras first came out, if we would have taken a camera to the primitive people anywhere in the world and showed them a picture of themselves, they run from it scared. And when we present people, for example, this individual that saw that coating on the produce, it basically scared him because he's not used to seeing that product do that to anything that he's ever eaten before.
Right.
And simply, if you'll put that in a glass of water and drink it, and you'll wash your fruits and vegetables in it, and you know what it's doing, you probably wouldn't get any reaction like he is. But because he's unaware of what it is and what it does, he's going to defend himself because it's strange and foreign information.
Right.
And that's the easiest way to respond to people.
Sure. And I appreciate that response. It was kind of a less vicious, more humble response than probably we'd like to.
Sometimes, when we're with our friends, we can get a little more vocal and verbose with them. But at a professional level, it's just pretty simple. People are afraid of that which they don't understand.
Right. We're at about just under 5 minutes left in the broadcast, so I wanted to give you an opportunity, Dr. Hatwan, to tell us what kind of things that you're up to these days. What is are you doing anything interesting? Any new studies?
Actually, I participated in a couple different groups here in Lincoln, and at one of the groups we had to all introduce ourselves, and of course I did and stood up and indicated that I'm 100% opposed to vaccines. And one of the other individuals that was there happens to be a PhD vaccine in the animal sciences, bacteriology vaccine development. And after it was over, he came up and visited with me and asked me if I would sit in his classes to offer challenge to the PhD candidates that are in his coursework. And so I spent the entire semester listening to PhD dissertations and presentations by the candidates that are working on their animal sciences PhD degrees, and in various different elements of animal science. Two students were in the food sciences side, 2 were on vaccines, and then 2 were just going to be veterinary science medication developing teams. And it's very interesting to sit in there and learn from the allopathic side inside pure science. But what was interesting is I got feedback from 2 of the advisors, and it was simply that I forced them to think in new directions, because as a pure natural health advocate, as opposed to we're in the molecular sciences and down into the level of DNA and messenger RNA and the components of genetic material. Those guys are in pure science, and when they saw the perspective that the naturopathic profession would look at health and wellness, it forced them to think in new directions as I challenged their students. So we had a wonderful 4.5 months of learning. And then I'm also looking at how the bacteria, because one of the students is in the food sciences looking at the biome of the body. We have over 100 billion microbes in the body. 10% of the cells, 10% are human cells and 90% are microbes. And so my concern is what happens when we use antibiotics in vaccines, skincare products, water, medications. What happens to that biome, and can we rebuild and restructure the biome once those antibiotics do their work? And essentially what happens is if we throw the biome out of balance, other pathogens and other microbes come in to fill the void. And is that a reason why we're seeing so much sickness and disease and degeneration today? So I'm looking at that aspect as well.
Wow. Sounds like you're pretty busy.
We have a lot of fun, Gene.
Well, Dr. Hatwan, I just want to thank you for being a part of our show today. And it's been been a real blast. I always enjoy having you on and discussing health and wellness, and I'm sure that the people will all benefit from this. This will be available in the archive for as long as the internet stays awake. So again, I thank you for coming on today and being a part of this.
Well, thank you. I always enjoy it, Richard or Eugene, and you tell your wife Ruth that we've had a lot of fun, and we look forward to the future.
All right, thank you, Dr. Hatwan. For all you living beneficiaries out there, I do appreciate you listening to the show. We're going to be extending to an hour soon. I think Friday will be our first hour show, so join us then. And to all, have a great night and God bless.